Hey, and welcome back to the second video. So in just a moment, we're going to talk in greater detail about these 6 things that are most essential for a school administrator to know in school emergency management. But first, a couple quick things. One is that I neglected to mention in the last video that now that you've signed up to see the second video, you're also going to be on a list where you'll get about once a month what we call PRIME University. PRIME stands for?
Preparedness and Readiness in Managing Emergencies. It's our company acronym.
So it's something that goes out, it's a free service. Once a month we send out a very simple video, usually 5 to 10 minutes in length, where we talk about the latest emerging trends in school emergency management, sometimes talk about scenarios that are in the news and dissect and sort of see what went right and what went wrong in certain scenarios. Again, it's just a way of just getting out some additional content to you free of charge so you can be apprised of some of the latest emerging trends in the field. Lastly, then we'll get right into these 6 points in greater detail. We also want to offer you a free consultation. If you just sign up on the form that's on this page, we'll get back to you within about 24 hours. We'll send you a very brief survey, an analysis of your existing emergency management plan, and then we'll set up a phone consultation. It's free, no obligation, where we'll actually walk through your plan with you, talk to you about some of the strengths and also some of the vulnerabilities, and talk to you in greater detail about how we can support and help and lift it up to that level where it's going to be really have all your bases covered, all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed, so that it far exceeds any state and government standards, so that you know that your plan is as thorough as it can be. So let's jump right back into these 6 things. So the first one we talked about is leadership. And like we said before, you have to champion the process right from the beginning, right? We said that if you don't, they won't. If you don't champion it, they won't. Meaning you can't just hand it off to somebody on your staff. Sure, you're going to delegate. Of course, that's natural. But you can't just hand it off and assume it's taken care of. You have to be the champion really, all the way through to make sure that your voice is the most resonant voice in the process so that everybody gets it. This is important and they have to be on board.
I have a profound example of, where I actually experienced this. I was working for a school district and it was my first day. And the first person I was meeting was the assistant superintendent of the schools, and he handled all the school security for the district. And I went into his office. Obviously, of course, we did our introduction, shook my hand, but the first thing out of his mouth was, "Carl, you have to write a school safety and security plan, which must include pandemic influenza plan." And right there, I said, with all my experience, I said, he gets it. He championed this cause.
Right. And remember, as a school administrator, you're the one who's ultimately accountable. So you do not want to look incompetent. You do not want to look unprepared. And it begins with championing the process right from the get-go. Second one we talked about is the stakeholder buy-in, right? And it's not just the internal folks on your key leadership team. It's also the external stakeholders. It's the emergency management people. It's the police and fire responders. It's the school staff, local health department feasibly.
Yeah, and we got to bring all these players to the table, and so we can all understand a common language. If you're worried about getting people to the table, I mentioned in the last video, I was a police officer for 25 years. Go down to the Dunkin' Donuts, get a pot of coffee, they'll show up.
Right. So the main thing is making sure that all those people have a voice in the process. Yes. Third one, must meet minimum government standards. If your state doesn't already have a set of minimum standards, it's going to. And you want to be ahead of the curve, not behind it.
Yeah, these are those 4 universal stages of emergency management I mentioned in the last video. And what they are is, the first one is prevention/mitigation. Second one is preparedness. The third one, of course, is response, and the fourth is recovery. And I can just briefly tell you what they involve. Is the first one prevention/mitigation? These are the things that you're going to address that are potential hazards for your school, internally or externally. The second one, the preparedness. This is the actual all the planning that takes place. Setting up your school safety teams and your district-wide safety team. The third being the response is actually all those things you did in that second phase, the preparedness and planning phase. You're going to actually put that plan into action. And finally, the fourth being the recovery. This is actually restoring the learning environment as quickly as possible, right? We want again, depending on how difficult the situation was, certainly we want to restore the learning environment as quickly as possible, and certainly to recover and maybe some mental health counseling and grief counseling, whatever it may be.
Facility repairs and that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
But the key thing there is that they have to be thoroughly addressed. You can't just give them very kind of quick lip service and mention these 4 phases. You have to be able to this is really the meat and potatoes of the plan, is making sure that this is all fleshed out. This is where the key stuff will really happen. The fourth one we talked about is emerging trends. And this is the stuff that, again, it's critical, but sometimes these are things that are constantly evolving and you need to be able to address them. Things like pandemic influenza, things like harassment, intimidation, and bullying, things like
Food defense.
food defense, thank you.
Yeah.
Right? Things that maybe 2 or 3 years ago we weren't thinking about. I mean, think about this, for instance, 10 years ago, people were talking, bullying meant what happened on the playground. That may still happen, but really where it happens is on the internet, right? Facebook, MySpace, this is where a lot of that stuff happens now, and you need to be able to address those various unforeseen new developing trends.
Yeah, and food defense, we mentioned food defense. The USDA, I mean, they've been talking about this for a while. Schools need to be prepared for food defense, which is really food biosecurity. Certainly to be prepared, God forbid that situation is where we have an act of, of terrorism to the food supply in a school. Again, very, very serious situation.
Right. And things like pandemic influenza, which, people thought it was really a hot topic a few years ago, and then it kind of fell off people's radar. It came back with the H1N1 or the swine flu, but that's still not even the avian influenza.
Right.
That is still a very big concern of the World Health Organization and the CDC.
Absolutely, because it still exists. Again, and when we were first talking about pandemic influenza, they were actually preparing for the avian influenza, the bird flu. Again, it hasn't made that human leap, transgression yet, but certainly that's what, like the CDC and WHO, the World Health Organization, these are the things that they are watching. But again, it's still active
Right.
and scary. I mean, we hope it never makes that human transgression, but it's got a 60% mortality rate.
Yeah, very scary stuff. So
Yeah.
you need to be very thoroughly planned on this stuff. Otherwise, the plan is, it's got holes in it, and you want to make sure you avoid that. Fifth one, it's got to be regularly practiced. And this doesn't just mean with your internal folks, with your team. And this is not just having, a quarterly fire drill or something like that. You have to be able to do various types of exercises, and you have to bring in those external stakeholders we talked about before. Because like I said before, when emergency happens, they're the ones that are going to show up, and they need to be a part of the drill. They need to know what the back and forth integration is of those various roles and responsibilities.
And it's a number of drills. I mean, and you may have heard some of these terms, but they could mean different things. Of course, there are lockdowns, there are shelter in places, there are evacuations, there are reverse evacuation. But a real quick example, lockdowns, that's an imminent threat inside the school. Shelter in place is possibly a threat on the outside, like the police may be looking for a suspect and you got to close your front doors. But I've seen in many plans where they're calling that situation a lockdown. Well, it really isn't, right? Because if they're looking for a suspect on the outside, the police, if you lock your front doors, I mean, the learning process still continues, all right?
So you want to make sure that you can really distinguish between those different plans. And again, the risk is if you don't, is that people aren't going to know what to do in various situations. So you really want to make sure that you're thorough and you address all those different kinds of things and they're practiced regularly. And finally, we talked about this being a living document. So important. This isn't something that just you do once and you're done. At least annually, you need to review this, or otherwise it gets out of date.
Minimum annually.
Right.
I would recommend more.
Yeah.
But minimum would be an annual review and then update.
So these are the 6 things that really underlie the consultation and the work we do with school administrators. So like we said before, we want to give you the opportunity to sign up for a free consultation. Within about a day, 1 business day, we'll get back to you with a very simple questionnaire, a very simple survey we want you to fill out. It won't take you more than about 5-10 minutes. Just so we get a sense of what you've done up until now, what the current state of your plan is and your level of preparedness. And then we would set up some time for you to be on the phone with us. It's a no obligation free consultation where we look through your plan, we talk to you about its strengths and weaknesses, and then also show how we can offer how we can lift it to that next level so that you truly have an airtight plan that when something happens, you can sleep at night knowing that your school community is going to be safe and protected, and that you in your role, you're not going to get sued, that you're not going to lose your job, and that your reputation is not going to be tarnished. So we'd love to hear from you, so all you have to do is sign up below, and we'll take care of the rest. And finally,
well, for the last 25 years, actually 25 years as a police officer, I handle emergencies. For the last 10, I've been involved with emergencies and school emergency planning. And really, there's a quote that I would really like to end on. Emergencies happen every day. Plan on it.
So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to being in touch with you soon.